Hello Animorphs fans and welcome back to another episode of AniLysis. We're looking at Garoff. I've made this picture of him using the Hawk-Bajir head on a dark roby background because as we'll first discover about Garoff is that he's part of the Council of 13 and they dress a certain way. So before we go into more about who he is, let's first talk about what he looks like. They were dressed in dark robes, so dark that they were almost black. They stood, motionless, held in place, suspended by gravity-neutral fields, fed by a continuous refined current of Kandrona rays. The Hawk-Bajir controllers wore a lightweight mesh beneath their robes to keep the wrists and arm blades from slicing through the robe's fabric. Garoff laughed. It was not a friendly laugh. He leaned forward and his black-red hood slipped back, revealing his battle-scarred, ugly Hawk-Bajir face. We only ever encounter Garoff in Visser, or what some people refer to as the Visser Chronicles. And in the only time we see him, he is as part of this, he's a part of the Council of 13. And so he's wearing robes, which, let's face it, are a bit cliche. You know, like Palpatine and all that. They always wear these robes, the hood over. But that's what the Council of 13 are all dressed like. So something, I'd imagine something along these lines. And it's made clear there that Garoff has a Hawk-Bajir host. A battle-scarred Hawk-Bajir host. Now we'll get into what we can imply from that. But next, let's cover his personality. Because we're basically going to paint a picture of who this Garoff character is before we move on to his plot points. So we've looked at his appearance, basically a heavily scarred Hawk-Bajir face under this robe. What's he like as a person? There will be no more disruption, Garoff said calmly. Visser 1, continue, but stick to your narrative. You are not to engage in conversation with Visser 3. You stole a ship, Visser 3 yelled. By her own words, she is convicted of a death penalty offence. Honoured council members, she has just forfeited her life. Let me take her now, right now. She has no right to live a moment longer. Silence, Garoff snapped. The council has long known about this, and has long since pardoned the offence. Visser 3 started to object, stopped himself, fell silent. Congratulations, Visser 3. It would seem you have gone a long way toward eliminating the bandit threat there on Earth. It was my hope they would attack, Visser 3 said with insincere modesty. I deliberately planted the seeds of this moment, knowing they'd be unable to resist such a prime target. I am pleased you were able to witness the elimination of the only resistance on Earth. Yes, Garoff said. And the timing was, of course, fortunate. Visser 3 said nothing in response. I felt a surge of renewed hope. Garoff, at least, was not blind. He didn't trust this coincidence. Throughout this book we get a sense that Garoff-168 is a very collected, very calm individual. Sort of the opposite of Visser 3. He doesn't act on impulse, he considers everything. And that's possibly why he ends up on the council. We will get into speculations about him later on. But he is very, not so much laid back, but I would consider him lawful evil. If you know what I'm talking about with the 9-part graph, so you've got chaotic good, lawful good, chaotic neutral, all that sort of stuff. I would put him firmly in the lawful evil category. So he's a bad guy. He's a council member of the Yeerk Empire. Pretty bad guy. But at the same time, he goes by the books and he wants to make sure that everything is uncovered before he jumps to decisions about something. And this is one of my reasons. That's one of the reasons he's one of my favourite villains of the series, even though he played a really minor role. Unlike a character like Visser 3, who is over the top, dastardly, mustache twirling, sort of villain, Garoff seems much more contained, restrained, able to think things through, and though he may be evil, he's clever about it. There is one point where Visser 3 is faking a battle in the trial chamber where this book is taking place, and we get this quote regarding the council members. The Council of 13 were shouting, avid spectators as a battle to the death. Behind you! Strike! Strike! It doesn't specifically imply Garoff-168 in this, but judging from how he acts in the rest of this, I don't think he's one of those being a spectator. Because what's basically happening is there's this fight, they're all holograms, so they're not actually there, they're not in danger, and they're calling out, "Way!" like football fans. Fuck him up, mate, fuck him right up, break his legs, that sort of thing. I just don't, from what we know about this character, from the personality shown, I don't see Garoff doing that. He's probably just watching, taking it all in. And that's where we got the quote earlier of him basically not believing Visser 3 after this has gone down. What else can we get about his personality? He's a bit prudish. And did you really cause your host bodies to reproduce? Garoff demanded incredulously. Yes. Garoff's face was hidden by the council member's hood, but I could read the stiffening of his limbs as evidence of his reaction. The entire council seemed to draw back. You will need to explain this, Garoff said. He's obviously repulsed by this idea of Yeerks getting their hosts to mate, which does bring about the question of how do that, because obviously they must do that. There must be a mating program involved in this Yeerk empire. How else would they keep the Hork-Bajir going generation after generation, for example? But he's repulsed at this idea, and it comes across, yeah, is prudish the right word for it? I don't know, but you get the idea of him looking at this thing as, oh, you're reproducing with lower beings? It's disgraceful. That sort of thing going on. So we've talked about this guy being cool, calm, and restrained, but we know he's a bad guy. And how did he get to the position he's in on the Council of 13? He probably committed some pretty heinous things that are even against the Yeerk law, as Edriss speculates. Of course, no Yeerk had risen to the council without breaking the very laws they promulgated. Now there is a problem with this quote. None of the council members had gotten to the council without breaking laws that they promulgated. Well, they wouldn't have promulgated those laws if they weren't on the council. Do you get what I'm saying? They didn't make those laws. How could they have broken laws that they put in to get onto the council if they weren't on the council to produce those laws? So that's just, for want of a better way of putting it, bad writing, basically. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. But I think what's implied, I think what the authors were trying to say was that they broke laws in order to get up there and make new laws, essentially. They didn't actually promulgate the laws that they broke to get onto the council, because that doesn't make sense, but they broke laws that were already in place from other council members in order to get up there on the council. That makes more sense. So, yeah, Edriss, it's basically saying that council members all broke Yeerk law in order to get there, which, again, we'll get on to speculation at the end of this video. But first, let's concentrate on the stuff that we can find, we can know from this book. Let's look at Garoff when it comes to being a council member. It will be for the Council of 13, wise leaders of the far-flung Yeerk Empire, to decide whether the accusations are true or false, Visser 3 said, sanctimony in every syllable. The councillors? Effectively, yeah. So the council members are said to be wise leaders from the far-flung Yeerk Empire. So basically the best of the best in the Yeerk Empire are placed on the Council of 13. Whether the Council of 13 can ever change to the Council of 12, Council of 14, whether it's an official there has to be 13, We don't really know. We can perhaps, when we get to the Council of 13 AniLysis, look at that. That's a question for another day. But what is it about this Council of 13? Well, it helps them not get assassinated. They're all talking to each other from different parts of the galaxy. So you can't just kill them all in one fell swoop. You'd have to assassinate them one by one, and of course they'd know that one of them would be assassinated, whatever. So it's actually quite a clever system from the Yeerks. So Garoff is probably off in, I don't know, maybe he's at the Hawk-Bajir homeworld, maybe he's on the Taxxon homeworld somewhere talking through this hologram system. One of these 13 is the Yeerk Empire, the big boy, the one in charge of everything, the boss. But we never find out who. And Edriss does think, maybe it's Garoff, maybe not. But yeah, definitely one of these council members looking over this trial is the Emperor. And this is narration regarding that. One of the 13 was Emperor, but only the 13 knew which one. Great leaders attract assassination threats. I felt Garoff's eyes on me, watching, considering. Him and the rest of the council. Was Garoff himself the Emperor? Was he the only judge that mattered here? Or was he just a mouthpiece for the real power? We learn very, very little about the rest of the council members. We know that most of the forms that they take, as in host bodies. We know that some of them are a bit more hooligan-like, as we learnt from the earlier quote where they're cheering on as the battle progresses. Is Garoff Emperor? Well, we can't know. There is pretty much, as far as I know, no way of finding out within the texts of Animorphs. We just don't know. It's down to speculation. Why are they in this Visser book? What does Garoff do? Well, he is the one who speaks during the trial. All the other council members, apart from when they're shouting at the battle, remain pretty much silent throughout. Totally. It's all Garoff. He is the one presiding over this trial and talking to Visser 1 and Visser 3. Why are they there? Let's look at the context that the book gives. Honoured members of the Council of 13, I am present at this trial under protest. I do not deny your right to hold me for trial. You are entitled to know anything and everything about my loyal service to the Empire. But that my Inquisitor should be none other than my most relentless enemy, himself a traitor, is intolerable. I spoke to the holographic representation of the Council. 13 Yeerks in various host bodies, 9 Hawk-Bajir, 2 Taxxons, and 2 whose host bodies were so concealed I could not guess at their form. They were light years away, of course. They would see me, my host face and body in 3 dimensions. They could also watch my vital signs translated into universal equivalents. Blood pressure, heart rate, hormone production, all reduced to digital readouts a billion miles away. And they could, with a thought, call up whatever data had been compiled on specific events or locations or individuals. This is Visser 1's trial that, very quickly it becomes apparent, is also Visser 3's trial. So both Visser 1 and Visser 3 are on trial for many crimes, basically being traitorous nobbers. Specifically, it starts off with them just focusing on Visser 1, but it also turns into looking at Visser 3 very, very quickly. That gives us the context of why Garoff is there, and we also find out the makeup of the rest of the Council of 13. So how do we first get introduced to Garoff by name? Well, it doesn't take long for Edriss to figure out who he is by his voice. You'll have plenty of time to make statements, Visser 1, a council member said. I did not know who. Visser 3, straining to sound obsequious, said, I would remind the council that this creature has already been demoted. She no longer holds the rank of Visser 1. That was a temporary reduction in rank. This trial will determine whether that reduction is permanent, or whether, indeed, Visser 1 is allowed to live. For now, she will be referred to by her formal rank. Garoff? Was it Garoff speaking for the council? I couldn't tell. Nor could I be sure whether it was good news or bad that my mentor would be taking a leading role. The same council member who had spoken before stirred. What are you implying, Visser 1? I could see now that it was, indeed, Garoff-168. Desist, Visser 3, a voice said. A Hork-Bajir voice. Again, it was Garoff-168, the member responsible for counterintelligence. So, he would be speaking for the council throughout my trial, which meant his opinion would count for a very great deal. Garoff also controlled the security troops, ringing Visser 3 and me. A word from him would send Hork-Bajir slashing into us. A few things here. 1. We find out that he's the council member for counterintelligence. There's not too much to unpack there, but there is some stuff. So what is counterintelligence? Well, it's in the name, basically. So intelligence basically means finding information, whether it be by spying or hacking or whatever. Counterintelligence is stopping people from doing that to your side. So he's basically there making sure there's no AniLysis spies doing something, no AniLysis hackers get into the systems. That's what he is the head of. Does that preclude him from being the Emperor? Not necessarily. We don't know what the roles of the other members are, for example. We don't get told that. All we know is that he heads counterintelligence, which must mean he's got to be good at his job, surely. We'd have to take a look into how easy it is for example, Axe to spy in on Yerk frequencies to get an idea of how good their counterintelligence programs are. The only time I really remember the Animorphs getting an upper hand in that regard by hacking is it book 45? Might be. So it's around that area. I can't quite remember where. It's in the latter stages of the series, where Axe has made this thing and he tunes into Yerk frequencies. Whether that falls under Garoff's area, I suppose it probably would. Like, talk about Yerk frequencies and all that, encrypting things. So maybe he was shit at his job. Maybe Axe had AniLysis techniques that the Yerks couldn't quite keep up with, because we know that the AniLysis are probably more advanced than the Yerks, so it wouldn't be purely Garoff's fault. Yeah, that's war for you. it's a race, basically. Race of technologies. You get better at someone that technology, they steal your information, get better. Basically, the most technological side usually wins, which is probably why the Yerks are eventually defeated. And funnily enough, they are defeated, yes, by humans, but humans with AniLysis technology. It's just that AniLysis were such arrogant twats that they couldn't be bothered to do it themselves, apparently. There's also one more really interesting part here, and I do apologise for my freaking hay fever riddled nose. Edriss says that Garoff was her mentor. And that's never brought up again. So far as I know, that is never ever brought up again. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But that requires a lot of thinking, doesn't it? So, in what capacity was Edriss mentored by Garoff? Was it as a warrior, as in intelligence? Because remember that Edriss was tasked with locating a class 5 species, which comes under some form of... it comes under intelligence to some degree. We'll get more into speculation at the end of the video. Let's carry on with this now. So we go through the Visser book, as it were, and because Garoff is basically at the forefront of this whole proceeding, the other council members are taking a back seat, he does all the little things that go on. Sorry, I'm not speaking... I'm speaking like freaking Joe Biden over here. There's a live memory transfer protocol or something like that. We'll do an analysis on that someday, which means that they're going to look into Edriss's memories, like actually look into the memories, like escort technology. And Edriss is like, I don't want that twat Visser 3 going through my memories, but Garoff says, no, it's going to be me. Garoff nodded, floating in his gravity-neutral zone. Visser 1 would have to agree to a live memory interface. To this treasonous, incompetent buffoon rooting through my mind? Never! Council members, Garoff raised a hand, silencing me. In exchange for agreeing, we, the Council, would offer you immunity for all secondary crimes. We only want the truth of the major charge, Edriss. The charge that you have delayed the invasion of Earth by incompetence or for reasons of sympathy with the host population. We have no interest in minor rule breaking, and the interface would be strictly confined to the time in question. You suggest I trust him? I pointed at Visser 3. No, I do not. I will conduct the memory probe, Garoff said. If you agree, Visser 1. Technicians inserted probes through my host's skull. I felt the slight electricity as they found my stretched, membrane thin body wrapped around Eva's brain. I felt a single mind, a single consciousness touching mine, Garoff. He did not roughly seize control. He insinuated himself. His voice alone at first. He asked polite questions. But we both knew the power was all his. Tell me, he said. Yes, I answered. We then proceed to go through Edriss's memories, and Garoff will spring up into those memories and look around and see exactly what's going on in some pretty fun scenes. So the first one is Garoff just in his Hawk-Bajir body without the robes, just appearing in this Toyota, just sitting there in the passenger seat like, yeah, cruising. Yeah, quality scene. Let's look through those and see how Garoff responds to Edriss's memories. It was my nightmare, of course. The fear that I was missing something, overlooking something. Humans were so different one from the next. I had seen so small a sample. Of course, Allison knew some of this. She thought she was manipulating me. She thought she was being clever. Yes, suddenly, sitting beside me in the car was Garoff. The garb of a council member was gone. He was a Hawk-Bajir, sitting calmly in the passenger seat of a Toyota Camry. Are you sure she wasn't succeeding? He asked me. It was absurd, insane. In my mind I was there, back there, years in the past, and here was a Hawk-Bajir, a council member. No, she never tricked me. Let's go forward 1 month, he ordered, and my mind simply leapt the weeks and months. Garoff shook his head, disbelieving. You made a bargain with a host? Not a bargain. I was using her. Using her to... Right now, in this memory, you're worried about Essam. You want him to come home from his work. Why? Why? I miss him. More than that, I see it clearly in your memory. Although you never admitted it, your host finds Essam's host attractive. Irrelevant. Humans are prone to all sorts of ridiculous emotions. Forward 1 month, Garoff ordered. Garoff walked through the doctor and looked down at me with furious Hawk-Bajir eyes. All part of understanding humans, Edriss. All in service of the Yeerk Empire. From the bed, looking up helpless at him, I said, No. No? You admit it? There was no point in lying. I had lied to myself then. Lied and told myself that I was simply investigating all aspects of human experience. Your host, this human, she turned you, Edriss. Yes, I was far from home, far from the Empire, sentenced to death for disobeying stupid orders. My host, her mind, her senses, she what? Visser 1 of the Yeerk Empire? She what? She was alive. She was alive. She was more alive than me. More alive than any of us. Garoff nodded. You had become Jenny Lyons, Visser 1. What? It didn't make any sense. You were addicted, Visser 1. You became addicted to humans. It seems that Edriss is shown to be effectively guilty of showing sympathies for the humans, which, according to Yeerk law, is a crime punishable by, I don't know, torture by death. I mean, the laws are that ridiculous. But yeah, she's thinking, oh, it's all over, I'm guilty. But this is when we truly do find out that the council are almost more after Visser 3 than they're after her. They're just trying to trip him up. Whether this is an order from the Emperor, which might well be Garoff, we don't know. Well, let's face it, it probably is the Emperor's orders, but Garoff is the spokesperson, effectively. So this is that. Edriss being shocked that she's suddenly not being seen as guilty instantly, that it's been turned towards Visser 3. All awaited Garoff's statement. For a long time he was silent, staring at nothing. Then, at last, he shook his head and apologised. "I'm sorry to delay," he said. "We will now proceed with Visser 1's statement." I stared. What? Continue? From what point? Why? Why? I was convicted. I was guilty. "There's another game being played here," my host said. "Another game altogether." No, I argued. "He's just waiting, But I didn't have an explanation. It was absurd. I wasn't an AniLysis spy, but a traitor? Yes. Or had been. "He's hoping for a way out," Eva said. "You are not supposed to be convicted. They want a way out. You have to find it. You have to discredit Visser 3. I had used the time to understand humans, to learn their strengths and weaknesses. "A spy," Garoff said thoughtfully. "Yes, a spy would want to blend in with the surrounding world. Might even need to stimulate certain sympathy with the local populace." I saw Visser 3's tail twitch, a gesture of surprise. Garoff had just shown his hand. Garoff was on my side. Garoff had performed the live memory interface, and now he was defending me, however indirectly. This does lend some credibility, I think, to the idea that Garoff is in fact the Emperor, because he's just in this room staring at nothing, and then he moves on with turning it towards Visser 3. Now, the other council members are probably in this room at the time. It's never mentioned at this point that any of them have disappeared. They're all still there. It does make you wonder if perhaps the Emperor isn't there and he's just pretending to be there. Because what is Garoff staring at? Staring into nothing. He's looking at something before he moves on. Is he just considering what he's seen in those memories and therefore making that decision? Surely then that would imply that he was the one making the decisions, running this trial, which would imply that he would be the Emperor. Or is he being fed information? So, say, whoever's in charge had been fed this information from the live memory thing, and Garoff was waiting on his orders of what to say. It's purely speculation at this point, but it's fun speculation, isn't it? Is Garoff the Emperor? I'd like to think he is. He seems like he'd be a good Emperor. Maybe I'll write a fan fiction for that. Who knows? I have actually had some thought about that. The Yerk Chronicles, focused on Garoff and his rise to be a council member. But anyway, the trial turns more towards Visser 3, and shenanigans occur. None of it really relevant to this AniLysis. And then we get to the end, where Garoff passes judgment on the two Vissers and tells them their sentences, what they've been convicted of, effectively. And it's one of the biggest letdowns of this book. This is it. Vissers 1 and 3. You have jointly or individually committed a dozen death penalty offences. You are both condemned to death by Kandrona starvation. I felt nothing. It was what I had known must happen. Death. The most terrible death we know. Both sentences suspended. Visser 3, you have failed to make progress with Earth. Your sentence is suspended for now because we simply have no one ready to take over operations there. Earth is vital. If you want the suspension to become permanent, give us Earth. Garoff clenched his Hork-Bajir fist. We need hosts. We need them badly. The AniLysis are building up their forces. Visser 1, we wish the AniLysis to attack us in the Inati system, but not immediately. The planet in question is ringed by numerous moons and large asteroids that will allow us to place Drake on cannon. Cannon are easier to come by than ships. You are too valuable to dispose of just yet. You remain the most successful military officer in the Empire, despite your illegal and troubling methods. You are ordered to proceed immediately to the Inati system and take over the subjugation of her sentient race or races, and prepare to resist an Andalite attack. Succeed, and you will live. Failus Visawan, and the sentence of death will be carried out. That is the decision of the Council. The hologram was gone. The decision of the Council, is it Garoff's decision as an Emperor, or is it the Emperor's decision which Garoff is being spokesperson for, basically being press secretary for the Emperor? That's basically all the quotes I've got for this, I'd say, very intriguing character. And yeah, that's the last of him. His hologram just go. That is all we ever see of Garoff-168, and everything else is basically up to speculation. And speculate we shall. We really don't get that much about him, but we do get just these little snippets of information that can come together to allow us to form a story in our heads of how Garoff-168 came to be where he is in Visser as a respected member of the Council of 13, presiding over the trial of 2 Vissers, somebody who even Visser 3 is effectively afraid of. There's not many people that can say that. So judging from the snippets that we do get, I've got a little bit of a headcanon going on. And it goes a little something like this. This guy started out as an ordinary shock troop, and he was in this Hork-Bajir host. The host that he's had all the way up till now. And he goes into several battles, proving himself on the battlefield as a very, very good warrior. And so from that he rises up the ranks, perhaps goes up to sub-Visser, then maybe even up to Visser. At some point he probably did go up to Visser. And throughout this he develops these battle scars. He goes into all these battles and comes out alive each time with a victory in his claws. That would explain the massively battle-scarred Hork-Bajir face that is revealed in the book. But we also know that he's in counterintelligence. That's what we know about Garoff, which you'd think is a non-combat role. I mean, I don't know much about Yeerk counterintelligence, but, you know, I don't think it's going to be very combative, which goes against this idea of him being a warrior. This could mean that maybe the Hork-Bajir host wasn't always his, and when he ascended to the council, or just even a bit earlier on, he adopted this host who was highly honoured because gone through so many battles, or obviously the Yeerks who had this host were highly honoured and gone through all these battles. It's almost like a trophy. I don't believe that. I think Garoff comes across as the sort of bloke who wouldn't take other people's glory, which is why I think that this host must have been his, because why else would you have a battle-scarred host? You've gone to the Council of 13, you don't do combat anymore. You're basically just a judge for trials, making all the big decisions. Why wouldn't you want a fresh, attractive host? Or one that isn't completely ruined from battle scars? I think Garoff is probably sentimental to this host. We've seen that Yeerks can be sentimental. Look at Visser 3 with Chapman. I think he's very sentimental towards that host, probably because he was Esplin's first human host, and also technically the first ever human host at all. And that's what allows Visser 3 to be so lenient to the human host Chapman in Book 2. It's that sentimentality. So there is that in the Yeerk psyche, to be sentimental about a host. So why wouldn't Garoff also be sentimental about a host who's seen a lot of battles with him? That also would probably explain why he didn't just throw away this old host and get a new fresh one, because he thought, this is the body that I got here with, and I'm damn well going to stay in it. So Garoff in this Hork-Bajir host got through all these battles, and showed that he was brilliant on the battlefield. What then may have happened is it got to a point where his host was becoming too old to work effectively on the battlefield. So before he just became fodder, they pulled him out of a combat role and put him into a counterintelligence role. And then he probably excelled there as well, because he's the leader of counterintelligence. He must be good. So once he comes out of this combat role, he proves himself even more. So not only has he shown that he's a brilliant, experienced warrior, but he's also got a great mind. Combine that all together, and you've got a wise leader who has the potential to become a Council of 13 member, perhaps even an emperor. That's the headcanon that I'm sort of going with at the moment. It's a headcanon I like, and it's something that potentially I'll do a fan fiction of in the future. The Yerk Chronicles, going over how Garoff went from this simple shock troop, maybe on the Hork-Bajir homeworld, and rose to become a member of the Council of 13. I think that'd be a fun story to write, after all the other ones I plan to write. Now, about him mentoring Edriss. Remember what Edriss's first roles were? They were basically on scouting missions, finding races of Class 5 origin, or Class 5 categorization. That comes across as something, vaguely to do with intelligence. And so the speculation there is, after he'd been in his combat roles, he went into counterintelligence, where Edriss was studying, and Edriss may well have studied under the tuition of Garoff while he was ascending through the ranks to eventually become Council of 13 member. But at the time, he was probably in just some tuition role or Visser role, looking over Edriss's area in intelligence. That seems likely to me. I don't see in what other way. I certainly don't think he would have been a mentor in a combat role for Edriss, considering what Edriss is like and Garoff's eventual role as head of counterintelligence. I believe it would be more in an intelligence, a thinky thing. But that's my speculation. It's very interesting that if it does seem a bit corrupt, doesn't it? If Garoff had been mentor to Edriss in an official capacity, why he would preside over the trial of Edriss as a Visser. Seems a bit dodgy, unless he was her mentor in a more unofficial capacity. But again, entirely up to speculation. If there are any fanfics out there, by the way, including Garoff-168 in a prominent role, I would love to read it. He's a fantastic character. I think he's a great character. Probably my favourite villain of the series. He's the Tywin Lannister of Animorphs. So if you know any fanfics out there that focus on him to some degree, please let me know and I'll probably go read it. Great character. I think he's fantastic, and it's a shame we didn't see more of him. Is he the Emperor? I like to think he is. I just do. I like to think, you give the Emperor a face, and it's the battle-scarred Hork-Bajir face of Garoff-168. Yeah, I like that headcanon. So, thank you very much for watching. This has been AniLysis. The next one's going to be on the polar bear morph, and there's more to that one than you might think, so please do stay tuned for that, as well as all the other videos that I'll be putting up around that one. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this episode of AniLysis. Let me know if I've missed anything. Hope you've enjoyed learning more about and speculating about Garoff-168. I shall see you next time. Ta-ra!